Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Brett.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
We're back in studio.
Brett is back in Miami after, 6 weeks? How long were you in New York?
I'm not going to say.
You're going to say 8 weeks?
I'm not. It was a while.
8 weeks?
It was a while, but not quite long enough.
Weeks. Welcome back.
Thank you.
To Miami.
Yeah.
We're happy to have you.
The weather, it's perfect outside.
It's been great.
The weather's fantastic. It's nice and cool out, and
I have thought it hasn't been that bad in summer here in South Florida.
Wet sauna comes to mind.
Coming from New York, where you're running in upstate New York, and now you're running back in Miami. My question to you is, where's your favorite trail? Like, what's your favorite trail to run?
Oh, man. I have so many.
You have so many. So just pick one that you really like,
So obviously there's so many that are picturesque, but I would say that one of my favorites is running around the National Mall in DC.
Yeah.
The historical sort of tones and the thought and running around these beautiful buildings and the history there is super cool for me. So that's one. And then obviously I have so many in different parts of the
That's not something you've done often.
I was going to DC. There was a while there where I kept going to DC. Remember one of my kids lived there for a little while.
Right.
So I was going to visit him, and we had some business up there, and we had conferences. There was reasons why I was going a bunch. I've run it a bunch, and it's just really it's just cool to me. It's just a cool feeling to be there and running that. Obviously, I have some others in different parts of the world, but that's it.
Nice.
And how about what's your favorite spot to swim?
I would say South Point.
Well, that's kind of boring.
Lucky that I get to go there.
You've done some other swims in other parts of
come on. St. Thomas. I've done a swim in St. Thomas a couple times. That's really beautiful, crystal clear water with lots of sea turtles and life. So that's why I like anywhere where I can swim, where I get to see stuff.
Yeah.
Turks and Caicos, really nice beaches, and I swim there, and there's lots of stingrays. So, I'm lucky that I get to swim in one of my favorite spots 3 times a week. So South Point. We always see lots of stuff there too. So
as long as you don't see something with those big giant white teeth.
That's my favorite thing
close.
To see.
I know it is.
My favorite, and the favorite way to see it.
I know it is. The only thing that I could potentially see are, not here, but up different parts are bears. I saw bears, but not when I was running.
Right. The thing is, a couple. If you see a shark, it's probably not attacking you. It's when you don't see the shark that you should be concerned. That's how.
Well, that's comforting.
Yeah.
That's very comforting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're fine.
Let's get to our guest.
All right, our guest today is Chad Volkert. Chad is the global C-suite leader and managing director at Protiviti. He has more than 25 years of executive leadership experience. He doesn't look that old, but
I know. We were in law school together. Man, he looks much better than I do.
He has built. I'm going to reserve comment on that. Chad has built and led high-performing teams across more than 30 offices and 2,000 professionals, and he serves as a trusted advisor to CEOs, general counsel, and senior leaders. He also joined us as a panelist at our 2026 Business Advantage Forum, and he spoke on the topic of leading through disruption, AI, innovation, and the future of work. And you can hear that conversation on episode 213 of this podcast. So welcome, Chad. We're happy to have you back.
Jeff, great to be here. Brett, great to be here. It's been a few years since law school, but to watch both of your careers, and what you've done here at the firm has been amazing, especially in light of what it sounds like you spend most of your time running and swimming. You do sneak in some of the practice of law from time to time and have been certainly recognized for being some of the best of the best in that business as well. I didn't prepare my answers for where I like to run and swim, but I'm happy to do that.
Bring it.
Tell us.
Running, I do have to agree. The mall, I remember when they opened the World War II Memorial, the first way I saw that was on an early morning run. I purposely left the hotel to go see that, but I love New York City as well. Yeah. The park.
The Central Park, You're running around the reservoir.
Exactly. And especially in the fall as the leaves start to change. So that's a favorite run, though the old knees aren't as good as they used to running. Swimming, I do a lot of pool swimming. I'm not maybe as brave as you, Jeff, to go in the open water and hopefully not see the sharks, but I do that occasionally. And this summer we had the fun trip over to Croatia with our 2 daughters and wife, and I did a long open swim in Croatia, crystal blue water. Amazing. You could see 50 feet in front of you, and awesome. And so that was pretty darn cool. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Was that a lake? Was that open water?
That was open water.
Wow.
And I didn't really realize, but in Croatia, you've got the mainland of Croatia, and you have over 1,000 islands right along the coast of Croatia. So when you're in that part of the water, it's almost like being in a lake. And it's sort of like
land,
right?
Because there's land and it's very close. Right. And it's sort of like being in Lake George or Lake Tahoe, where it's very calm and again crystal clear. So
wow, I love that.
What a great experience!
Yeah, it was great.
Okay.
Put that on my list. So I'm curious because you guys went to law school together. And I think, Chad, you and I met separate from Brett.
That's correct.
Later in life, but you took different paths. So, and I think, we have a lot of listeners who are lawyers or in law school or considering law school. And so here's an example of 2 guys who started out together and you took totally divergent paths. So tell us about your path. How'd you get to here from law school?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, it goes back to law school. I probably knew midway through my second year that I may not want to be a practicing lawyer. Now, that was because... I'm sorry?
How'd you learn?
I was interning and I was doing a lot of research and writing with like a door closed back then. And I was like, I don't know if I really see myself doing this. I grew up in a family where my parents were in the service and the professional services business helping people. My mother had a unique background where she built self-confidence and self-improvement schools and impacted over 20,000 young women primarily as graduates from that program on how to advance their professional career. My dad built a real estate business with 60 agents in Buffalo, New York, primarily being able to provide African Americans and other minorities the first-time opportunity to buy a home. He would actually front their down payment when you could do those things back in the day before some other regulations came in, and then get paid back by the bank. So he would be their bank on the front end. And when he passed away, I'll never forget a gentleman from Midas Muffler came and put his hand on my back as I was getting ready to walk into the church. And I turned around and he said, "Are you, Chuck Volkert's son?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "I still live in the same house. And but for your dad, I raised 4 kids in that house and had my wife's 1964. I would have never been able to bought the house. And I still live in it. And I wanted to come pay my respects during my lunch break."
Wow.
So, they had that type of an impact. And when I was in law school, I wasn't necessarily feeling that, doing the work. Also, unlike Brett, I graduated in the top 10% of the bottom 50% of my class. So I wasn't going to be a great lawyer. And I knew right away that maybe that wasn't going to be the career. But I did leave law school and joined a litigation firm. I worked for Jim Nosich for about a year. And again, I realized that probably wasn't my calling in life. And that's when I met my now wife, Verushka, who was in IT staffing and recruiting. And she said, "Listen, the large Fortune company, Robert Half, is looking to open up a legal staffing and recruitment business. And they're looking to hire lawyers that don't want to be lawyers. You should think about it."
Wow.
And that's how I applied. 11 interviews over 7 weeks. We've slimmed the hiring process down a little bit since then, but they had questions about me. But I was one of the first 4 that was hired to build that business. And I've been very fortunate to surround myself with a lot of people smarter than me over the years to be able to grow that business into hundreds of millions of dollars. So,
I'd say kudos to you for, and it's hard for young people, right? To be able to sit there, you're in law school, you're paying for this, you're doing it, and you're like, God, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do this. And you realize early on, and you pivoted. Fortunately, your wife, as I know I owe a lot to my wife as well, so thank you for shouting out Verushka. Yeah. But is it your parents? Is it your childhood? Like, why were you able to do that and think that way at such a young age and say, you know what? This isn't for me. Because a lot of people say, I don't know if it's for me, but I'm going to stick it out and I'm just going to do it anyway.
Right.
Well, and that's what you're taught also. Don't quit.
Don't quit. Keep pushing, right? Even it's hard. Yes, it's going to be hard, but you'll be fine and you'll get there and don't worry about it. I'm sure you heard that from people before you left.
Heard it, including my dad, who when I told him I was going to go into the staffing business, he said, "Son, are you crazy? You just paid your way through 3 years of law school at University of Miami. You've got a great position at a law firm. You're going to take a pay cut, right, in order to hopefully make more." But then once he and I talked about it, And I grew up in a Christian household. And so I think having faith of any sort, right, depending on your background also helps, because they had long talked to me about having a calling and a purpose in life. Do you feel fulfilled in what you're doing? And at the point of my career then in law, I wasn't necessarily feeling fulfilled. Now, I remember Rhea Grossman, who was working for Jim Nosich at the time. I think she was one of the first women ever to serve on the Florida Supreme Court. She said to me, when you practice law ethically, it's one of the most noble businesses in the world. Well, I certainly found out a few years later, when you help people find their new career and advance them professionally, it's one of the most noble businesses in the world when it's done ethically. And I think working at Robert Half and now our global consulting practice, Protiviti, we have always put ethics first. We've put solving problems and helping people as our mission first. And I think that was very, very rewarding. So that allowed the transition, even though it was difficult at the time. And I had some doubts, like, is this really what I wanted to be doing? But it certainly quickly, pretty early on, literally within a few weeks, I was like, yeah, this feels good. Right. So
tell us a little bit about, Robert Half, I think everyone's familiar with the name, but if you want to tell us about, Robert Half, and then Protiviti, which is maybe new to some people, tell us what the distinction is.
Well, Robert Half has a long history going back to 1948. It's a Fortune 500 company, actually the largest specialized staffing and recruitment firm in the world, meaning professional staffing, accounting, legal, technology, management, et cetera, right? There's other large staffing firms in the world that do other type of work, but we're the largest in the professional staffing space that is publicly traded. And it's only had 3 CEOs and 3 CFOs in our history, which is a lot of stability, a lot of excitement over there. Primarily, the growth happened under Max Mesmer. Actually, former practicing lawyer, was one of the youngest partners ever to be named at O'Melveny and Myers back in the day out in California. And mid-career said, you know what, I'm not being fulfilled in the practice of law, enjoy it, have a lot of great colleagues. And he went out and actually bought the Robert Half business from Robert Half himself on the back of a napkin in a diner in New York City for around $7 million. And his goal was to transform it into a global staffing firm, which he did. And now Keith Waddell serves as our CEO, who is actually the gentleman who put the deal together for Max back in 1986. So pretty cool story there. Wow. When Arthur Andersen was going through its issues 23 plus years ago, we decided at that time that we could build a global consulting practice on the backbone of our ability to leverage talent through the Robert Half contract talent arms. And so we acquired a small group of folks from Arthur Andersen. It was about an $18 million practice. That's now $2 billion. We're in 26 countries. Wow. We have over 9,000 full-time consultants. And on any given week, we employ thousands of contractors through Robert Half to be deployed on those engagements, offering clients the global essence and the sort of full complement of a consulting firm in technology, legal, management, digital, et cetera, but different price points based on leveraging up and down talent, not only full-time consultants, but also contractors that we manage, offering a different way to solve client problems.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
also,
that's awesome.
So you've been there 30-ish years.
I'm getting close. Don't date me that long, Jeff.
Saying,
but yeah, it'll be 27 years this fall.
So when you joined, how
we were small. We were less than $1 billion, and now all in we'll
less than $1 billion. We were small. Boutique.
Well, compared to what it is today, and compared to other businesses.
That's right.
Less than $1 billion.
Less than $1 billion. There was no legal staffing, no legal consulting, and now we're approaching $7 billion. I ramped up the legal staffing arm to over 300 recruiters, and we had people around the world doing that business. Again, I learned a long time ago, guys, to hire people smarter than me, which isn't necessarily hard, but I surrounded the team and filled in the gaps with great people with great strengths. And then when the federal rules changed in 2006, that was the acceleration of this alternative legal space. I happened to get in on the recruitment side, and the alternative legal space in 1999, meaning non-practicing lawyers either in law firms or in-house, was only about about $250 million all in the United States. At the end of this year, it's estimated to be over $30 billion in spend in the alternative legal space.
When you say $30 billion in spend, you mean that is what that industry is generating? Not
what the industry is spending on those
services,
on
non-law firms. Right, services.
Dumb it down for me.
So, obviously you guys are in big cases, litigation, et cetera. You're using litigation tools, you're using advisory services, all of those things.
So all the tangential.
All of the tangential is really the third leg of the stool, right, as I call it. And prior to 2006, that was a small niche business, right? You'd get trial graphics done or you'd get some, investigative services. But when the federal rules changed, e-discovery catapulted everything into that next generation of career opportunities for lawyers and non-lawyers in the legal space. And I knew back in 1999, I loved the legal space. I didn't necessarily want to practice every day. And that's why this marriage within consulting and staffing has been wonderful for me, because I get to sit on the other side of the table of experts like you and help solve their problems or their client challenges. And that's really rewarding.
Cool. I love that.
So why for you personally, like the transition from basically building a recruiting platform to now helping build and sustain a consulting platform? Why the change? Why did you do that? Yeah. And what are the sort of the major differences in your approach and bringing that change that you're looking for?
I mean, I wish I said I had a crystal ball and I had mapped it all out, but what was happening in the recruiting space because of the federal rules changing is that our clients were requesting 50, 100, 400 lawyers to go through electronic documents, right? And to handle large-scale litigations, investigations, and even M&A due diligence work. And I realized at that point, as Protiviti was growing, we were primarily just doing sort of SOX and audit work and just getting into the technical consulting aspects. Right. And I'm dating myself, but this is going back to 2007, 2008, where the financial crisis was almost upon us. I started building out within the Robert Half family these large document review teams and project management consulting over the top of that. And then the financial crisis hit, and it was a whole new world, as you all remember. And I remember going to our CEO, Max Mesmer, and at the time, our Chief Operating Officer, Paul Jenskow, and Joe Tarantino, our CEO in Protiviti, and saying, listen, we've got a really big opportunity to rapidly grow in the legal advisory and consulting space, not to be a law firm, but to work side by side with our law firm partners to the benefit of their corporate in-house counsel and clients. And they sort of looked at me because, of course, it's the downturn, right? And everything is a total mess. The great thing about Robert Half, though, is we've never operated with debt, and that's allowed us to jump at unique opportunities when they present themselves. So I gave them the business plan about how we were going to build this out globally, and they looked at me and they said, okay, I see how much it costs. We'll write the check for it. Just don't mess it up, right? And that was around a round table in Menlo Park at the corporate headquarters,
right? You can curse here about it.
Okay.
It was don't fucking up.
It's a man of faith. He's not going to curse. It's okay. I've been holding my tongue.
I've been known, but so, but you never know. Kids might be listening to this. So, but at the end of the day, that's how it happened, and it rapidly grew from there. I had 3 individuals that were on the team at first, and it was a nothing business, right? We had basically no revenue. It was a few $100,000 at the time, and we rapidly grew that to over $100 million and just kept growing, right?
Amazing.
And it was great. You just keep adding people, and what was really exciting too was you had a lot of individuals that were in the practice of law that had great skills to do this work, but were not being fulfilled either, or didn't know what their next move was. So a lot of the members of our team, right, are former practicing heavy hitter lawyers, paralegals, contracts managers. And so again, that whole area of the world really expanded, not only with our business, but across a lot of different firms.
What's the pitch? Or is there a pitch? Do you have to convince lawyers that they're not happy and that they should come over to work with you guys? Or are they not happy and they find you and say, listen, a lawyer, I'm just not fulfilled or whatever it is, and I want to make a move? Or
they may have already left the profession, tried something else, and now they are looking to use some skills, right?
It's so, It's so organic. It makes sense. It makes so much sense.
Right.
It's so close. But
we have a benefit with the Robert Half and the Protiviti structure because a lot of those lawyers who are not happy, right, for whatever reason, right, will go to the recruiters within Robert Half and explain. And of course, they understand what we do in Protiviti, right, and even what they do in Robert Half, right. Most of the folks that I hired across the country had a legal background to do legal recruiting, right? That's always been a model within Robert Half, whatever discipline. So we were always on the lookout for somebody, and we'd ask, so why aren't you fulfilled? Well, they're not paying me as much as I know I could. Oh, so you really enjoy the practice? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, that goes into we need to find them the right opportunity, and it shouldn't always be about money, right? Obviously, that fulfills many people for a short period of time, but then we talk big picture. But when they're like, I really don't enjoy the practice, I'm burnt out, I love the legal space, or I love my legal colleagues, but I don't want to do this anymore, then we dive into a deeper discussion, right? I always love to ask the question, if you had a dream job, what would it be? Now,
work less, make more.
Right. Or an astronaut or whatever they say, but it shows a lot of what the core that they're looking for, right? They know they're not going to be an astronaut, but then you start taking that discussion in a different direction. And if they're looking to solve problems, help people, work in collaboration with outside counsel and in-house counsel and the C-suite and executives, then that could be a marriage, sort of made in heaven.
So they get to work adjacent to it. They're just not, they don't have to practice. They don't get in their view, the things that weigh them down.
That's right.
Yet they can still use their skills and be fulfilled.
Yep. And manage teams, do it a little differently than what you would do in-house or within a law firm environment.
Right. So if Robert Half is also, the services used is also effectively a recruiter for Protiviti.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Robert Half's largest client
is Protiviti.
Both from who we hire full-time through their channels and then all of the contractors that we put out on managed engagements around the world.
So you said something in there which I found interesting, and I know it resonates a lot with young people. It's easy for older people to say that we're all in this room older than younger people. The money is not always going to be the thing that is going to win the day in the long run. And that's hard, right? We were young, you got bills to pay, you got families to raise. Talk more about that and what you've seen and how you kind of relay that and communicate that to younger people, because that's hard for them to understand and do. But there's also a position where it's like, I agree with you. You're not making what you should make. Let's make the transition, but let's do it in a way that, makes sense for the long run and not just chase the money.
Yeah. It's a really interesting and hard question to, I think in my career, I've hired over 2,000 people, right? Plus, let alone all the individuals that we've interviewed, right? And we've provided advice to. I always come back to, are you looking for a job to have a job, or do you believe you have found your purpose and calling? And maybe early in somebody's career, they don't know that, right? But are you at least thinking about that in the process? Then I remind them, I sit in a lot of interviews and they already start talking about how soon they can be promoted.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, we're hiring you to do this job. Yeah. If you do it 110% and you're really good at it, you're not going to need to raise your hand. You're going to be tapped on the shoulder to do other things as long as you're working at an innovative and or high growth company that recognizes how to move you along your journey, right? And that's the other big mistake people make is they run for the money, they run for the title, but it's at a company that does not allow growth. And then they wonder 2 years later why they haven't been promoted, why people are making more money outside of the firm. So it's important to look at all of that and sort of coach them through that.
Right.
Again, if they need money right away, it's a hard discussion, right? But I try to talk with folks about your 3 to 5 year plan and go and do what you're being hired to do really, really well at an opportunity or a company that provides upward mobility. And the rest can take care of itself, especially if you love waking up every morning, putting on your shoes and heading to the office. You can do really, really well. And now with AI and technology, the younger generation coming up that has never lived without an iPhone, right, has never lived without some form of AI and technology in their hands, which is different than us. We've learned it over the years, right? We advise, I use it every single day to run sort of the business that I'm in. But that generation knows about it just holistically as just a thing, right? That is part of their life. And the ability to leverage that exponentially can help in their career growth.
So you mentioned AI. We can't not ask you about it and the impact on recruiting, both from the employer and employee side, and sort of what you're seeing in that sort of with AI and with everything that's coming out. What trends are you starting to see both from the employer and employee side in terms of recruiting? I know you're not in that necessarily, but you're still sort of in that space.
Sure. Let me start maybe at the top, where when AI was really beginning to get hot over the last 18 months, a lot of leaders were thinking initially, and very vocal about this, how am I going to utilize AI to maximize work so I can reduce headcount? Wrong way to think about it. Leaders and executives should be thinking about, how do I maximize AI to have exponential growth and maybe not have to hire as many people as I did prior to AI. This is a growth opportunity at top line and bottom line, not just a bottom line exercise.
So make the people you have more efficient and effective, your company more efficient, effective, and plan for and grow more efficiently and effectively so you don't have to hire as many people to get to where you got before.
That's right. Versus using tech and being able to let go of 30% of your staff. Right? Because there's no growth there. There might be some additional profit margin there gained, but not growth. And so then what are you doing for succession planning, right? And we saw this with certain demographics of individuals that were more concerned about dropping money to the bottom line versus others within leadership that might be thinking more 20 years out versus 5 years out, depending on where they were in their career. Now, I think that has really changed in the last 6 months. I think a mindset has changed.
For sure.
And now folks are really dialing in, like, we can do a lot with this and do it differently, but they have to be open to that. That leads into the main issue that we're seeing right now, which is a lack of foundational understanding of AI within companies and from an AI governance standpoint. So though these tools are being used, the risk of a law firm, the risk of a corporate client is exponentially growing because they haven't built the house correctly, right? They've let some people pilot. I mean, we love hearing this, right? And it is the next generation a lot of times, like, well, I'm using this. I've just built this over the weekend. Why can't we pilot it in the office? And then somebody somewhere within the organization says, okay, yeah, that sounds great. Let's run a pilot on it. Well, there's been no AI governance set up, no foundation, right? And, what are people doing outside of the office? What are they doing inside of the office? And so you do need to slow down a little bit, and you need to have the right people in the room and the stakeholders. Early on, there was a lot of discussions being happened in silos within operations as well. The CIO was handling a discussion. The CISO in security was handling a discussion. The COO, now on the operational side, none of them were really talking. I just met with a client last week where it started with the discussion with the general counsel. She and I were talking about what she needs to do from an AI governance. I said, but you realize all of this spills into these other areas. And so fast forward to the meeting, we had the COO in the room, the CISO in the room, the head of IT in the room, and the general counsel in the room, right? And they were all sitting there, and we brought the experts from all of those areas and about the overlap. And so that's the way the world is moving. And then as that flows down into the workforce, and then I'll stop and shut up here because I'm rambling a little bit AI. You can see, you can get me going on this topic. The workforce, enabling and upskilling, and you mentioned this, Brett, right? Like, how do you take your current staff and accelerate their understanding of technology and AI to make them even more valuable, both for themselves professionally, right, as well as for the overall organization, right? We just finished an engagement with a law firm where they were looking across their paralegal and legal secretary staff. And what we did through a quick assessment was realize that only about a third of them were actually using the technology on their desktop at 70% or greater value, right? Now, it wasn't an exercise of removing everybody from the team. Some most likely will be displaced. It was is here's the solution on how to upskill them so they become much more valuable for the firm so you can experience exponential growth and handle more cases, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the process that will be phase 2 for them. And that's an important process to go through with all employees.
And in that example, that's a company that actually put the technology on their desktop and still whatever percent, whatever the number was, we're still not using it. And the ones that were using it still weren't even using it to their capacity. Whereas most companies haven't put anything on the desktop. And so it's kind of a free-for-all.
A free-for-all, or they put a little bit on.
Right.
And there's not been a rollout.
Very little training.
Yeah,
guidance.
The change management is huge, right? I mean, you all know, right? I mean, what you both do from a practice of law, legal expertise every day is different than a paralegal and different than a legal secretary and different than the head of e-discovery and et cetera, right? Yet many clients have just been, here's Copilot 365 on your desktop. Use it.
Right.
So, well, use it, right? I mean, how, again, I use it. I mean, I walk in every day and all of my emails from the last day are in different categories, right? First drafts of emails are responded to, not sent. I never do that, right? I go in and I look at what it's drafted. But of course, I've preloaded all of that information. So it's learned how I like to write emails to specific clients. But that's how I use it, right? Because that's what I need to do.
Ooh, I like that, by the way.
Yeah.
We
drafting, I know.
No, we can't.
We're not doing
We can't because of the security. We can't do that. But with Copilot anyway.
Right.
But so, and I appreciate all of that. So now flipping to the younger generation and the recruits, if you will, that you see and come in, and what we're seeing is the concern, right? It's out in public too, not just in the legal space. The concern with the younger generation, like AI is going to replace me, and like I don't like AI. I don't like AI for a number of reasons, not just it's going to replace me, but it's invasive, which it is, and there's some bad things that have happened and will happen, as with any technology. But what do you talk about with the recruits when they come to you and they, if they talk about this stuff, what are you hearing and seeing, and how do you guys deal with that? Or how do you see companies dealing with that to get them to the point where they say, you know what, actually, this may be a good thing, and I have to sort of up my game and learn these skills too?
It's interesting. I know we all have kids, and I just mentioned I've got our first daughter going off to college here and taking her up there tomorrow. And she's very much of this mindset because she was trained in school not to use AI, not have the accessibility to AI and all the guardrails around that. Right. So she's a little unclear about the future with AI based on how she's being taught. And even in the colleges, even though many of them are now moving in with AI studios and AI degrees and these type of things, a lot of that was predicated on how to code with AI, not necessarily how to use AI in business and for your career. Right. So it's going to be very interesting as that begins to swing, because as you all know, there's a school here, I think, in Miami now that opened up, right? That is basically saying, we guarantee that your graduating high school senior will have $1 million AI business when they graduate, or whatever they're promising. But I think that's where AI and the human touch, we believe, right, at Protiviti, I believe that AI only works as well as it can with human guardrails and human insights, right? And that personal interconnection. Right. The individuals that are going to succeed in life are the ones that can understand and use AI, but build trust and relationships as we're sitting like this at a table. Right. And we go to have lunch and sit in conference rooms, right? Nobody is going to trust AI purely because they read it on the screen. Right. And that human connection is going to be very valuable. And so I tell a lot of folks, a lot of young professionals, you need to have interpersonal skills. One of the biggest things in the world that will be of the most importance is no longer going to be sitting in some dark office coding, because the first 19 rows of code don't need a human anymore, right? And not speaking to anybody. It's actually going to be talking about how you've built an AI agent to solve a business problem across the boardroom table with a C-suite executive who needs to believe you and believe that you are overseeing that engagement.
Yeah, it's like any technology. And we were talking about this with our younger lawyers, right? I mean, Jeff and I are old enough and you're old enough to know that when you first started practicing, Westlaw law was very, very new, if at all. And we would have books. And I was talking, and they were looking, when we were talking about it, I was like,
what's a book?
You had to go to a book and do the case.
Where are those books kept?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. These massive libraries, and law firms had these massive libraries. And then you had another book that shepherdized that book, that case, to figure out if there was negative
This is why
treatment.
you did better in law school than I did. I forgot all about that, but I remember the library.
And then
sure.
when Westlaw came out, I was like, oh my God, now we have to learn this.
Yeah.
And so
when I was a kid, I used to walk uphill
backwards in the snow. Right. Yeah. Well, right. That's what the whole.
It resonates well.
I don't know if the meme about what our parents used to tell us about walking uphill in snow backwards, whatever, is now we're saying, well, we didn't have AI when we started. Like that's the new anyway. But the point is that I agree with you. You have to embrace it to the point to understand it, to make yourself better and your firm and your practice better. Right. Because I think it can, if used the right way, instead of running from it as being fearful of it. I think there are ways to make it. And we have lots of programs that already have it built in.
Sure.
Yeah, it's here.
But it's going to take over. Like the first year lawyers are not going to be doing the stuff that we were doing as first year lawyers. And candidly, what we were doing as first year lawyers wasn't what the generation or two before us was doing.
Exactly.
Right? So, but there is a divide and difference in beliefs about AI that, that has to be bridged, considerably.
Well, and to your question, too, a first, second, third year lawyer, I firmly believe, will spend more time communicating with clients than traditionally typing those briefs and memos and doing research, right? And so finding that skill, learning that skill, recruiting for that skill, going to be very, very important for those individuals.
100% earlier in your career, you're going to be doing that stuff as opposed to, like you said, doing research, document review, and drafting memos.
And we see that across all industries. The executive suite and their teams that are hiring people are far less concerned about the school of graduation than about what they did and are they a solution-oriented problem solver that can communicate. Now, again, that's a blanket statement. There's certainly roles that don't necessarily need that. But they're asking that far more often than did they go to XYZ school? What was their GPA? Right. So it's interesting.
Solution-oriented problem solver that can communicate. That's what we're looking for. Boom.
Right.
Chad, this has been fun. I'm landing this plane right here because I think we could go. I mean, this topic is fascinating and it's going to take us a long time to figure it out. But for now, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for enlightening me.
It was great.
Thanks for coming here. We appreciate it.
Love The Office.
And if you enjoyed this episode, let us know by leaving a 5-star review.
How can you not enjoy this episode?
I mean, come on. Subscribe to the show and share with your friends and family, and we'll see you next time. Chad, Christina, Brett, thank you all.
We'll hear you next time, or they'll hear us next time.
Okay. See, I mean it like a figurative.
I got you. Thanks, everyone.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit bastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @Bast Amron.